All right, team, after an eternity, the patch notes have finally dropped. And before we get into them, I just want to let you guys know I'm not going to be going over them line by line, going over everything. I'm going to have a very pointed navigation of things I was particularly interested in and things I really wanted to find out about. So it'll be kind of jumpy and not really whole. I will have the patch notes linked in the description if you want to go line by line yourself. But anyways, let's jump into them. First and foremost, all this bullshit is just everything they added in the announcement video. There's nothing really new here or to talk about, so moving on. First up is endgame changes. This is going over a lot of the corruption things they changed and the addition of fraction orbs, that sort of thing. It talks about how the mechanic actually works. This isn't probably too important to really go over, I don't think anyway. They talk about how you can enter and exit your maps as much as you like. Someone actually posed a question that if you only had one portal, you wouldn't be able to like loot a bunch of shit and go out. So this obviously is addressing that. You can use a single portal ideally as many times as you like. The number of portals is representative only of the revives that you have during the map. Moving on, a lot of this is just again talking about the endgame changes, the respawn with bosses, and how like when you fight a boss in a map you'll respawn, blah blah blah. One of the really interesting parts here though is waystones can no longer drop at a tier lower than the map you are in. I think this is a phenomenal change. It is really annoying seeing a bunch of dog shit waystones. I actually think this change is cracked, I'm not gonna lie. This is gonna make it feel much better. You won't have to have an atlas that is specifically devoted towards getting new waystones or increasing your waystone chance and higher tier waystone chance, which they acknowledge they changed right here as well. Also, waystones dropped by final map bosses will now always be one tier higher than the map you're in. This is a really nice change. It means that your like progression will be much more deterministic. This will also make overseer tablets a bit more useful, although it does look like they are nerfed. I do think that overseer tablets have kind of always been oriented towards the early game and progression. This kind of cements them more in that role, having the guaranteed one up to your waystone. So I think this is overall going to be a really nice change. These might have some uses later. I'm sure they will. We'll just have to wait and see. A lot of the rest of the stuff is just stuff we've already talked about. Recombinators, buffing Untainted Paradise, adding some unique maps, that sort of thing. Bunch of tablet changes going on here. Some simulacrum stuff I don't really care about. It does look like though that they want to make it so that you will fight pinnacle bosses much sooner at an easier difficulty early on in the game, rather than kind of you just don't ever fucking see them until the very end, and then you do like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, that sort of thing. They also made it so of course you don't lose experience anymore from any of the pinnacle content. This is kind of nice, honestly. See, there's no really like risk anymore, so I actually am okay with this. It looks like the actual league mechanics in maps have been just changed a little bit overall. So Delirium, for example, the overall number of monsters have been reduced, but by touching fracturing mirrors you get way more monsters to spawn, those little shards of glass in the map. Reduce the intensity of the fog in Delirium encounters so you can actually fucking see, I don't know, anything on the ground. They switched up some stuff with Breach as well. They made some strongbox changes, who cares, they probably still suck. And omens now always appear as ritual rewards in map areas. There's also a small chance for additional omen to appear. So I think this is just probably a net buff to ritual overall. Ritual's fucking in, boys. Let's hit it. Who cares about any of this dumb shit? Moving on. Atlas passive tree changes. This is all honestly kind of just pretty meh. I was kind of hoping to see a much larger rework of the Atlas passive tree and see more things added here and there and see a lot of the stuff moved around. I think the Atlas tree as it kind of stands, at least prior to 0.2, is pretty boring. So maybe this will help a lot. Maybe the added more notable passives and rework some existing ones to make the available choices more interesting will help. We will just simply have to see. This is just a bunch of random nerfs. Who cares about any of this dumb shit? You can read it later. Moving on to general improvements. This is just a bunch of random shit about like stashes being moved and repositioning locations, some crash stuff, and then, I don't know, some debuff. Escape shot still probably blows. Further improved safety checks to prevent movement skills to skip elevators. Thank God, because, you know, or you could just get rid of the elevators, you know. I know there's 1,001 ways to do this, but sure, whatever, you know, don't want to be that guy. Firebolt now uses the same animation as freezing shards instead of generic projectile spell animations. Thank God. Ooh, another one I forgot to mention. Many fire skills now visually burn the grass in areas. It's like they think we're fucking stupid. You guys think we don't know? You were all just high as shit around the fucking office. Just, yo, fuck, dude. What if it burnt like the weed? This is literally what they did. Good one. Love that. Moving on to player changes. We start off with a bunch of dumb shit about cruel difficulty areas and unarmed attack speed, blah, blah, blah. Freeze now builds up roughly 48% slower on enemies, so probably a huge nerf to freeze builds, honestly. Player-based ailment threshold is now half of maximum life, previously all of maximum life. Nice. So now we can get frozen and chilled and fucked even more. That's sick. Yeah, hell yeah. Presence has been reduced in radius. Perfect. Love that. Monster modifiers stolen from rare monsters, such as through Behead support, have had the effect that provided players adjusted to be more appropriate. Who even fucking uses Behead support? Candlemass, great, less life. Worn Sandals of the Sakamas. This is the trial dog shit. Blocking hit by raising your shield parrying now gives you a chance to avoid accumulating heavy stun buildup. Great. Unified stun mechanics and terminology between players and monsters. The stagger that players suffer when blocking too much with their shield raise is now a heavy stun. So I think that you have heavy stun and light stun. Light stun is going to be that stagger that knocks you out of animations and stuff, that like makes your character slightly move or whatever. That's the super annoying one. And then heavy stun is going to be like the big ones where you stun yourself for 3 seconds for being a fucking idiot. So there are some changes to light stun further down that are actually kind of nice, and I think overall this will be a better change. You can no longer be light stun with your shield raise. Modifiers to curse effect. I think this seems like a buff. I don't actually know. I will refrain from making any sort of declarative statement on this. Moving on, player created objects such as ice crystals no longer monster power value, whatever. I think that was for like war cries and that sort of thing. Ice crystals can no longer apply on kill effects such as Herald of Ash and Trample Toes Overkill, so rest in peace. That's just dead as fuck. Players have 50% more light stun threshold per time stun in the past 4 seconds. This helps reduce the chain stun thing, which is really nice. Your heavy stun bar doesn't start emptying until the heavy stun animation has finished instead of when the heavy stun animation starts. This is like a bit of a buff, so it'll take longer to be heavy stunned a second time after being heavy stunned the first time. Heavy stun duration on players is now 3 seconds, previously 1 second. Jesus Christ, that's a lot. Players cannot block or evade, blah blah blah. Of course, critical weakness stacks now track duration individually rather than reflection of the duration of all stacks when a new stack is gained. I think this will make it so that if you're using Eye of Winter, you can't just cast it one time and just say fuck it. You will have to be continually casting it some way, shape, or form. This is for sure a good change. I mean, critical weakness was already extremely strong. Eye of Winter was very strong. I think this will be a good thing overall. Pin targets no longer evade. Great. Pin, hell yeah, we love that. Base duration for charges has been reduced by 5 seconds. Fully broken armor now causes enemies to take 20% increased physical damage from hits. I think this is actually, this is dope. We love that. So it's just 20% more phys damage on anything with broken armor. This makes armor breaking actually a little bit more worthwhile because I do think it was pretty lackluster. And Ancestrally Boosted Slam now has 30% more damage instead of 20% is what this is getting at. This, I think, still will suck ass. This will still be pretty bad for the Titan tree no matter what, so whatever, moving on. Bunch of hoopla about persistent minions and players and monsters only count as moving while moving, whatever. Setting a stat to a specific value, such as Chaos Inoculation, setting your life to 1, or Blood Magic, setting your mana to 0, now occurs before conversion is applied to that stat, rather than being ignored by conversion. This is a pretty big deal. This means anything that used life or mana while using CI or Blood Magic, it will no longer be able to benefit from the original value of the pool before it was converted. It will now act whatever you're trying to use a percentage from. I think Ghost Wraith did this with CI. It pulled like a percentage of your max health before the CI conversion. It will now just be useless with CI. So I do think this is overall a positive change. I think this should never have been a thing in the first place. So I'm happy to see this one. Moving on to Ascendancy changes, we have Surprising Strength, which now provides 50% more damage against heavy stun enemies, previously 40%. This is actually a really good note. I think heavy stun was something that was really slept on, and it was very good. It's definitely one of the things I learned, so I think this is just good overall. This is one of the better nodes for the Titan for sure. Earthbreaker Ascendancy provides 25% chance for slam skills you can use to cause aftershocks. This is also nice. So Titan received a buff to all 3 of its major damage ascendancy nodes. It got a 5% for aftershock, and then the increased 10% from ancestrally boosted, and as well as 10% from more damage against heavy stun enemies. I do think the ancestrally boosted one is going to be worthless, but these two will be kind of nice to have. I did run these in my Titan Earth Shatter, and like I said, I do think heavy stun is really solid. Real quick, I'm only going to comment on the things I actually understand or know about. I don't want to talk about things I have no understanding of. So for example, with Ancestral Spirits or Jade Caster or Jade Hulk, I don't know about any of this. I don't even know what Warcaller's Bellow buff is, so I'm going to skip all this. The Paw Shell Aura from Ancestral Spirit Turtle, yeah, fucking good one. No idea what any of that is. All I can say is that Warcaller's Bellow Ascendancy, this is a buff overall because now it applies to Warcry area rather than your Presence, because Presence was also nerfed, so this is dope. Moving on to the Gemling Legionnaire. Really don't. I honestly just hoped the one line would be this Ascendancy has been removed, but sure, I guess this will work. Skipping this. Witch Hunter, No Mercy Ascendancy now causes you to deal up to 40% more damage based on their missing concentration. Previously was 30%. This is actually pretty good. 10% is fine. I think this is okay. I don't really mind the concentration Ascendancy. It's whatever. I don't think this will really help Witch Hunter that much, but maybe this in combination with the crossbow changes will be very positive. They buff sorcery ward, so now instead of it having your armor and evasion, it only reduces it by 35%. For Deadeye, I don't know what this node even is. Moving on. Pathfinder looks like it got some really solid changes, I'm not gonna lie. Running Assault, now granting 50% less movement speed penalty instead of 30, is really nice. It also got swapped with Relentless Pursuit. In the original Ascendancy tree, Running Assault was the first node, and then Relentless Pursuit, the immunity to slows, was the last node. Now they are flipped. I will point out though, even if Running Assault has 50% less movement speed, you can still get on the fucking horse and just throw your shit from the back of a horse. So I do think this is actually kind of nice because now you can get speed unaffected by slows for only 2 points instead of 4. So I think overall this is probably pretty good. I would assume this is a buff. They removed Connected Chemistry, and Enduring Elixirs no longer has a prerequisite. Connected Chemistry was this node right here, so now you can just get Life Flask effects are not removed. I think this is also another major buff to Pathfinder because not being able to get this for 2 points was really toxic. So I think that's also another big improvement. And then they added a multi-choice, a new Ascendancy that gives you either an immunity to shock, ignite, or freeze. I love that it's freeze and not fucking chill. Whatever, it's not important. And then they added a new Sustainable Praxis Ascendancy, which provides 30% of evasion rating, also grants elemental damage reduction. I think this is a cracked notable as well. Overall, I think Pathfinder caught some huge dubs in this. Like, holy fuck. Moving on to this poor, old, limping, disease-ridden dog that is the Acolyte of Kayula. They buff darkness per level. Who cares? Ravenous Doubts. Also, who cares? It just gives mana leech now for all damage. Great, love that. And then more importantly, the one thing the Acolyte of Kayula could do was Trial of the Second was no hits because its darkness took damage before honor. So you had a little bit of a barrier with the one hit run. That is now removed. This had to be nerfed for sure, but also like not giving them anything. I mean, dude, just take old Yeller out back. Put it the fuck down already. Acolyte of Kayula and fucking Gemling Legionnaire can be buried together in the same fucking grave. Invoker looks like it was nerfed pretty much overall. The And Protect Me from Harm Ascendancy now takes 10% more evasion rating, so you lose 50% instead of 40%. And then Lead Me Through Grace now grants you less spirit overall for ES and evasion. The Elemental Expression skill, I don't even know what this is referring to, so I'm not going to comment. Moving on to Blood Mage. Oh god, you know what I mean? Like, Blood Mage needed this. Half of this novel needed to be devoted to this Ascendancy, and we got 2 lines. It's looking grim, okay? This is not looking good. The Blood Barb Ascendancy passive no longer provides 10% of damage, gains extra fizz damage, now causes bleeding you inflict on cursed targets to be aggravated. Cool. Love that. This whole, like, the combination of everything, like, you gotta curse and bleed and stun and ignite. I don't know how I feel about this. Whatever. This still doesn't address the primary problems of Blood Mage. This may or may not be good. I don't know. Add a new Between the Cracks Ascendancy passive skill that causes critical hits to ignore monster armor. It requires Sanguimancy. So they just added in, and also, like, who gives a fuck about... Blood Mage is still dead. Rest in peace. Moving on to Infernalist. They made some changes to Demon Form, where now it comes with a base maximum of 10 Demon Flame. Previously it was uncapped, and now they changed the Master Darkness Ascendancy. This was the node behind Demon Form that made you cap out at 10. That is the node that allows you to have no maximum. This is a pretty significant nerf because now instead of running 2 Ascendancy points, you now have to run 4 to get the same level of power, and the dodge roll while in Demon Form has distance reduced, has been a thing as well because we hate fun. We don't have fun here. Fuck Demon Form. It was cool. Let's make it less cool. Also, kiss Scooby-Doo goodbye. He no longer will take 20% of damage from you. He's in the fucking grave in the backyard. Thank you. Furthering, you will have less max mana from your small ascendancies, and on top of that, you cannot Pyromantic Pact cheese anymore, where if you reduce all of your mana, you will still have 1 maximum Infernal Flame, because we hate fun, although this one actually probably did have to get nerfed, to be fair. They made some other buffs, it seems like, to Seething Body and Grinning Immolation. Seething Body now gives you 50% of damage as fire damage instead of 20%, and then Grinning Immolation now grants you 50% more critical damage bonus instead of 30. These are obviously buffs. I don't really know about Pyromantic Pact. And then you have Bringer of Flame, and now causes all damage from you and your allies in your presence to contribute to Ignite, Chance, and Magnitude. This is hard to say. I don't know how good Ignite is going to be. I don't think it was very strong in the previous patch. Maybe it'll slap. I think it would be cool because I do like Ignite. I think it's a really cool ailment, and then it no longer requires Pyromantic Pact. Moving on to Chronomancer, I don't know anything about the Chronomancer, so I'm just gonna kind of let you guys pause this here and read it if you would like. For Stormweaver, we have some pretty significant nerfs that were all necessary, of course. The Force of Will Sensei now provides 1% increased effective Arcane Surge on you per 25 max mana instead of 15, so this is a huge nerf that was of course necessary. Scouring Winds now causes exposure you inflict to lower the effective resistance by an additional 12% instead of 20%, so almost a 50% in total nerf to this. Strike Twice now no longer provides 50% less shock duration, instead it provides 25% less magnitude of shock you inflict, so this will really hurt shock scaling and make it difficult to do, which I do think is a good thing. It was way too free of a layer, just get double 100% max effective shock. It was absurd. And then the small mana Ascensi passive skills no longer provide 4% increased max mana, they now give you 12% increased mana regeneration rate, which I do think it is technically a nerf, but this is kind of nice, so whatever, we'll take it. For the passive skill tree changes, I'm not going to go over everything, but of course they added a bunch of new clusters. They added a new keystone called Crimson Assault, which causes your bleeding you inflict to be aggravated and base bleeding duration to be 1 second. I don't know how good this is or how not it is. They added in a keystone called Trusted Kinship. This will be for the beast taming thing for rangers. I'm not going to go into this because I don't know what any of it means. And then they had the removal of the following notable skills, which you may or may not recognize. A big one here is 12 jewel sockets have been removed. You can get the jewels back by typing /reclaim jewels. This is a big one because I do think there were way too many jewel sockets on the tree and they kind of became a bit overpowering. I don't think this is really a lot of jewel sockets. I'll be curious to see which ones they actually end up removing, but I do think this is probably a better change overall. The Acrobatics Keystone passive now reduces your evasion by a further 5%. This is pretty significant, although it's not, I don't think it's game breaking. Acrobatics is really good. It's what allows you to dodge all hits, so this is a pretty significant nerf, but necessary, I would say. The Eldritch Battery Keystone passive now has the additional property of doubles mana cost. Yikes. So fucking rest in peace, this thing. Jesus. They changed some wording on Giant's Blood. I don't know what any of this stuff is. I will note heavy buffer because I think that notables like this will be a big deal for Lich players, given the passive that allows their life not to change as long as they have ES. So I think things like this will be pretty strong. Skipping all this bullshit that I don't know about, we have Master Fletching. This has been nerfed. This is what gave you the bonuses from Equipped Quiver. I think all of this shit should be nerfed in the ground as well, so I'm okay with this. Moving on to Polymathy, this now grants 7% increased attributes instead of 10, so this is a stat stacker nerf. This is a mana stacker nerf. Spaghettification got absolutely gutted. Instead of 7% increased attributes, it's now 13% to all attributes. Again, I think attribute stackers need to be nerfed no matter what, so I'm okay with this. Aside from some extra wording to split the earth, I don't understand a lot of this, so I'll skip most of it. I will point out, however, Unwavering Stance did get a pretty significant buff, I would say, which is that you cannot be light stunned anymore, so you can't be staggered, which is kind of the big thing that you really care about. This is a lot more similar to what it's like in PoE 1, but of course you can still be heavy stunned if you hold your shield forever like a fucking idiot. So finally, we arrive at skill changes for these. Once again, I'm only going to cover the things that I actually know about. I'm not going to try and cover a bunch of shit that I have no idea, so I'll probably skip all the minion stuff like Skeletal Cleric, Skeletal Arsonist, Adjusted Minion Damage. Yeah, I got no fucking idea, bud. But starting off, we have many skills that have their base damage or damage growth per level rebalanced. Most of these changes are not specifically mentioned below as the changes are too widespread. Fair enough. The mana cost for all attacks, marks, and war cries has been reduced, most notably at higher gem levels. I think it's actually pretty good. I think the mana costs got insane later on, and they were really toxic to deal with, so I'm happy about this. Arc is fucking dead, you guys. I don't even know what I'm reading, so it no longer deals more damage for each remaining chain and chain 6 to 8 times instead of 2 to 5, and then the quality now provides 0 to 2% more damage for each remaining chain. It previously was 0 to 5. So the problem is that its base was 10% damage for each remaining chain. It's now 0. So you get 6 to 8 chains, so it'll have better clear earlier, because that was a huge problem with Arc, is it did not clear well at all early on, but it hit pretty hard for single target, and now it has absolutely 0 fucking single target, so rest in peace. Joining Arc in the grave is Archmage. This now causes non-channeling spells to gain 3% of damage as extra lightning damage for each 100 max mana. This used to be 8%, it was 6% at max level, plus 2% for quality. Quality now just gives you reservation efficiency of 10%, which is whatever, and it also costs more mana. So this is like, damage wise, it's almost a 66% nerf, and then overall it's just absolutely gutted as fuck. So for the best, Archmage was trash. Armor Breaker, I don't think this actually matters because, again, any mob that has armor broken gains 20% increased phys damage taken, so I think this is pretty offset very well. Again, a lot of this stuff I don't really know about. Bleeding Concoction, I would keep an eye out for bleeds. It seems like there's a lot of things for bleed this patch around, so maybe bleed will probably be something to look into. Cast on Minion Death. I think this was a particular nerf for the Cast on Minion Death builds that would just spam the little fire guys, Raging Spirits. So I think this is probably for the best as well. I do want to note that Combat Frenzy also received a fat ass nerf, which is rough, but again, maybe for the best. I don't really understand the concoction skill change, require an unarmed weapon set. So you used to run the Widow Hail with some quiver effect and get a really nasty quiver for concoction skills. So now that you can't do that, I really don't know what this is going to look like. And then they also up the mana flask consumption, which I think is also rough because now you have to invest more into this, and solving this was already a really annoying problem just in general. Looks like curses just across the board were nerfed in terms of the amount of resistance that they reduce. Eye of Winter, I was looking out for Eye of Winter given the potential nerfs to critical weakness. It looks like Eye of Winter wasn't really changed at all. It actually seemed like it got like a buff in terms of damage wise, which I think is fine. I don't think that really is going to make that big of a deal. Jumping down to fragmentation rounds, I wish that this was a little bit better. I think frag rounds are really weak in the current state of the game. It looks like Galvanic Shards will actually get a bit of a buff, increasing the conversion rate, so I think this is good as well. Grim Feast is literally dead. You can no longer get it in the game, which is dope. Hammer of the Gods no longer has a cooldown, but it requires Glory to use. I kind of get this, maybe not. I don't know, Glory seems like it's pretty toxic. It's just based off heavy stun, so whatever. Maybe that sucks ass. All of the Heralds had their base AoE just kind of nerfed, which I think is probably for the best. I'm still not sure that these are going to be like totally dog shit or anything like that. Even after the chaining nerf, we're just going to see how they perform. Moving on to Hex Blast. I don't know too much about this, but it does look like it was pretty heavily nerfed, so that's kind of rough. Jumping down to Leap Slam, I was hoping to see some sort of animation reduction, but whatever. I guess we can't get so lucky. Lightning Conduit seems to actually just kind of be unchanged, so whatever, I guess. Fuck it, who cares? Oh, excuse me. Lightning Conduit has 20% more damage per 5% shock effect on enemy. Previously was 100%. Okay. Yeah, never mind. Just kidding. Yeah, fuck you, Lightning Conduit. Moving down, Lightning Warp no longer creates shocked ground if targeting a lightning ball projectile. This is actually a pretty big deal because I know this was used a lot. Jumping down to Rolling Slam, now has a +1 second to attack time. Previously was 1.5 seconds. This is actually kind of a big deal. A lot of people, I don't know why it wasn't used more because I think it's really good. Rolling Slam has two parts to the attack, and what you can do with Rolling Slam is that you can do the initial attack and then cancel it before the second attack and go right into a Bone Shatter. And you can use Rolling Slam to prep your Bone Shatter. I think increasing the attack speed of the ability by 50% with Bone Shatter will actually be kind of a pretty cool combo. It'll feel really good in campaign at least. So I think this is actually a really positive change for Warriors overall. The Seismic Cry one down here, I don't think this even matters. Like Warcry speed has never really been a problem. So when I kind of saw this, it's like whatever. Again, a bunch of stuff I just really do not understand. Looks like Spark got nerfed. Fuck Spark forever. Moving on, Tempest Spell also nerfed. Good. Fuck Tempest Spell. I think this ability was way too strong, obviously. The on-kill effects of Herald skills can no longer trigger from kills caused by Herald skills. Oof. God damn. Holy shit. Yeah, RIP Heralds. Oh my god. Jesus Christ. Once again, a lot more stuff that I really don't know about that I'm not going to comment on, but I will point out two things. They added a new gem tag, conditional. This denotes a skill which cannot be used unless a given condition is met. Combo as an example. And then this is an interesting one. Modifiers adding or subtracting a value to cost of a skill now apply before cost multipliers from supports. Oof. So I think they applied after, and now if you add, increases your mana cost by double or whatever, it then doubles, and then it is now multiplied by the multipliers from supports, I believe is how that would work. So fucking yikes, mana costs are gonna be disgusting in this patch, you guys. Holy shit. Jumping into support changes, they can actually fuck off with these astral projection changes. Just remove the downside of astral projection. This is a cool ass support gem that allows you to cast Frost Nova anywhere and any other Nova skill, and I think this shit is tight. And because they add this bullshit in, it is literally never viable. It is just dog shit because of this. So I really wish they would fix this, and maybe one day they will. Moving on, Brutality got a nerf, whatever. I think we can expect a lot of this because it probably should be, because overall damage just has to go down, of course. A bunch of modifier stuff. Again, I'm not really going to cover a lot of this stuff into detail. I don't think it is really necessary. A lot of this stuff is just cost multipliers for mana, and I'm assuming this is to kind of offset some of the changes. We'll have to see. Another thing I will mention is that Shock Siphon is gone, so you can't get it anymore. This is the only source of ES on kill that I know of, and this with Grim Feast being gone, it's going to be really rough to sustain your ES. I'll also point out that Spell Echo can no longer support triggered skills, so you can't put Spell Echo on Cast on X anymore. Probably for the best anyway. overall, again, there's just not really a whole lot interesting here that I can really comment on. Next, we have unique item changes. Once again here, I'm just going to talk about the things that I know about. So first of all, Against the Darkness, it had its radius nerf. This is actually a big deal. And then anything that was 2 to 4% of a specific attribute is nerfed to 2 to 3. Again, this is a further attribute stat stacker nerf. I think this is, of course, good. Against Darkness jewels no longer cause small passives and radius to grant 1% increased max mana or max life. They now cause small passive radius to grant 8 to max mana or 8 to max life. So this is just a nerf version of what they did prior to. Astramentus has been nerfed somewhat. It has a much lower end, so 30 less on the lower end, which is probably a bigger deal than I am making it out to be. I really don't think this does a whole lot, but whatever. This is a big one. Adziri's Disdain unique helmet now has 10% of damage taken bypass energy shield. Previously was 20 to 25%. So I think this is kind of rough because when I was thinking about the Lich thing and how their health cannot be changed if they have ES, Adziri's Disdain was one of the big things I was pointing out, because I think you can actually roll this up to like 30%. So again, now it's going to be 20% less than what we thought it was going to be. So definitely kind of a rougher change that I was thinking of, but probably, again, for the best. It also now has gained 10 to 15% of max life as extra maximum energy shield. That was ferociously nerfed. It was previously 25 to 30. Choir of the Storm is still mega fucking bait, and I'm not even going to read this because I don't care. Dream Fragments got its mana reduced by half. So instead of 20% increased max mana, it is now 10. It doesn't matter. Mana stackers are dead as fuck anyway. The Everlasting Gaze now cause you to gain 4 to 6% max mana as ES. Oh my god, it was 20 to 30%. And then who cares? This shit, like, you just delete it. You know what I'm saying? Like, fucking, you guys are actually looking to comment this bad boy out. I don't know what we're doing here. I have Keula, now just gives you cannot be light stunned. I really don't like this light stun shit, but whatever. This is what it does in PoE 1. It prevents you from being staggered, essentially. Ghost Wraith has been absolutely destroyed, cut in half, literally. So now it's 25% of max life converted to ES. And remember, if you do any sort of CI or anything that reduces your max life, this will apply after your max life has been reduced. So that is another nerf to keep in mind. Oh yes, Hands of Wisdom in action. Please, yes, get shit on. So now it scales on 20 intelligence as opposed to 10. It now scales on 20 dex as opposed... Oh my god. Holy fuck. Provides 1% increased attack speed per 25 dexterity. Previously was 3% per 25. Good criminy. Yo, you guys sure you didn't mean to just delete this bad boy? Or what are we talking about here? Like, what is anyone gonna do with these? I'm gonna put these on my fucking dog? Hello? Ingenuity no longer has 48% increased bonuses gained from equipped rings. It now has 30 to 50% increased bonuses gained from left ring, and the same thing for right ring. I do believe this is to offset the Ritualist, because they're gonna have a third ring slot, so this prevents them from getting any more increased effect on their third ring slot. Overall, this is just kind of a fat nerf to Ingenuity, which I think is a good thing. I think this belt was way too strong to begin with, and it kind of just became the only belt that anyone used. So overall, I'm happy with Ingenuity getting absolutely dunked the fuck out on. They changed Last Flame, so damage taken cannot be absorbed to further prevent absorption cheese. This is the relic that gives you Temporalis. Exodel's Machination unique shield now has 100% increased effect of socketed soul cores from 330 to 666. Good god, that shit is dead as fuck, and has the additional property of Everlasting Sacrifice. I think this is the one where as your ES hits max, it resets and it gives you like +5 to max all rest. That's what it was in PoE 1. We'll see if that's how it works in here. The Melting Maelstrom no longer has property to recover all mana when used. Okay, so the Melting Maelstrom is just dead. I think you guys meant to delete that one too. No big deal. The Moor Invictus unique body armor now generates with 3 random modifiers, previously 2. The following random modifiers can no longer be rolled. 10% increased rarity. Okay, GG. Max life, mana, attributes. All right, and then what else can it get? 6 to 10 spirit per socket, 6 to 10 global defense, 5 to 7 LA res was pretty... Yeah, I think they meant to delete this item too. No big deal. Happens to the best of us. The Pillars of Cage God now provides 1% increased attack speed per 10 dex and 1% increased area effect per 10 int. Was 2% respectively. It also provides now 10% increased weapon damage per 10 strength. Previously was 10% per 5. Overall, I don't think this will matter too much given the insane nerfs to stat stackers. Queen of the Forest body armor now grants 1% movement speed per 800 evasion. I think this was necessary given the changes to Amazon. This will still probably be pretty good, and you'll still probably see this used quite often. Sandstorm Visage, I mean, this thing is such a piece of shit. Like, who... A critical weakness once per second for 15 seconds? Don't they fall off now? Like, what are we even doing here? Temporalis, I'm actually surprised they nerfed this because it was so hard to get, or should have been so hard to get, but it did in fact get nerfed by half. The max is now -2 seconds instead of 4. And then lastly, we have some nerfs for the Time Lost Jewels, which I don't really understand, so whatever. Moving on, we have item changes. Jeweler's Orbs now simply set a skill gem to the specified number of sockets respective to the Jeweler's Orb. This is nice, so you don't have to use like a lesser, greater, blah, blah, blah. Advanced and expert item bases now have distinct names. I think this is a good change. It's kind of annoying to see this, and this will help kind of differentiate between which bases you really want and which you don't. You have 3 tiers of runes. We saw that in the thing. Runes are now doubled in terms of drops. You can no longer reforge runes, whatever. Using a Valorant item can no longer cause a modifier with a value of 1 to be reduced to 0. Okay, that's kind of nice. The base damage of all crossbows have been increased. Crossbows now have 2-handed versions of added damage modifiers instead of the 1-handed versions they were using. Oh, okay. This is kind of a big fat fucking buff to crossbows. Physical thorns, I read this, I don't care, move on. Increased rarity of items found. Modifiers on items have been lowered at the top end. The suffix modifier now goes up to 25 at the highest tier, previously 30, while the prefix modifier now goes up to 25 at the highest tier, previously 32. I think what they meant to do here was to actually just turn this off and set it to 0, but fuck, we can only get so lucky. Golden Charm. Anytime I read this charm word, I skip it. No, thank you. Breach rings now have an implicit modifier, maximum quality of 40. It was 50, so a slight nerf to those. I don't think that's that big of a deal. Chance for breach rings to drop has been greatly reduced. Notable passive skills and starting areas can only be instilled, so you can't grab like the really early ones. I think this is probably a better change. Honestly, you should probably not go for those, but some of them are pretty good, especially the ones in the monk tree. Holy fuck. Jewel and time lapse jewel modifiers that provide stats scarcely located on the passive skill tree, such as increased blind effect or damage taken, recouped his life, have been adjusted. Generally speaking, the minimum range has stayed the same, but the maximum values provided is lower than before. Okay, so Jewel and time loss Jewel modifiers that provide stats scarcely located on the passive tree are even more dogshit than before. Dope, thank you. You can no longer get increased effective auras. Fantastic. The fletching and time loss Jewel modifiers that provide increased bonuses gained from Quiver now have values of 4 to 6 and 2 to 3 respectively. Good. I think this is a good change. Jewel modifiers that grant increased energy generation now grant 2 to 6, previously was 3 to 7. Soul Core Vast Kappa has 5% increased quantity of gold dropped by... Mr. President, get down. Oh my god, dude. This is a disaster. Okay. Damn, dude. This got deleted harder than Grim Feast, and that's not even the game anymore. Moving on, they nerfed some corruption stuff and some scepter things I don't really know about. Amulets have been reduced in terms of their increased max mana they can roll across the board. All items now just provide less max mana in total. A lot of these modifiers were way nerfed down. Lastly, we had some LE damage modifiers nerfed, and then the big one is relic modifiers that cause merchants to have additional options. Now only grant a single option. Previously they were 2 to 3, so I do think that is a pretty fat nerf to Sanctum runs, I think, if that's what the one they use. Moving on to monster changes, this just makes it so bosses can't be perma CC'd and prevent the fight from progressing. All armor monsters has been reduced by 30%. This is another big dub for fizz damage, at least I want to say. Looks like Soul Eater has been nerfed somewhat, or pretty significantly, like by kind of a lot, so that'll be nice. Soul Eater mobs will be a lot less toxic. They nerfed the life pools of the earlier pinnacle bosses, the Trial Master, as well as Zarko or Zillion, the guy at the end of the trials. Both have had their life reduced. They removed Armor Pen from Olroth, Zesh, the King, and Arbiter, so this is another dub for warriors, in fact, because now they will have actual armor defensive against the physical damage, so that's a good thing. Moving on, it just looks like there's a lot of changes to how a lot of the bosses work, and some of their damage and some of their abilities got buffed, some of them got nerfed. They changed the thresholds for Prime for stun and Prime for execution on magic mobs. They have Electrocute now builds up 44% slower, Pin now builds up 58% slower, that sort of thing. There's a lot of stuff like that in here. It seems to be kind of a jumble of mix and match of buff and nerf. The one thing I do want to mention here that I really have to fucking just cream my jeans to is Iron Enforcers no longer use their tentacle grab skill. Fuck this skill and fuck this mob. This is the thing that if you got hit, it would just like almost glitch you out and prevent you from moving or doing anything. I think it was actually, it just pinned you. So yeah, this is a really nice change. That's pretty much it for the fundamental gameplay changes and the big things that we were looking for, at least that I was interested in. There's of course some quest stuff and some UI stuff. I will have the patch notes in the description so you can check it out for yourself if you are so interested. Last thing I will mention is the microtransaction changes. This entire wall of text is a fucking farce because I see no mention of the Goblin Truth Pet, but that's all right. There's a lot of oversights in this patch, albeit that one is the most massive by far. I'm sure they'll get it right next time, and if not, I will get it on Twitter and say some mean shit. So think about that next time you forget the single most important pet in the game. But alright guys, that is all she wrote for me. I'll be doing another video giving kind of a summary of everything that was in this patch, so keep your eyes out for that. But until then, I'll catch you guys later. Deuces.